Hi, everybody, and welcome in. It is 4 o'clock on this Thursday, July 15th, 2021. And if you are with us, this is the third in a series of 3 information sessions for employees and the general public about school calendar proposals in the year 2022 and the fall of 2023. And to be clear, we are not talking about the upcoming school year, which, as always, will begin on Wednesday, September 8th, 2021. We are speaking about the future, the years that come after that. We are glad to have you with us. Before we begin, I'd like to make an introduction. We have our superintendent, Dr. Amy Cashwell, who has been listening in all week with us. Dr. Cashwell, welcome back and good afternoon to you.
Thanks, Andy, and good afternoon to everyone who's joined us for this conversation session. It's so wonderful that so many of you have taken time out of your busy schedules to be with us. You know, we certainly appreciate every opportunity that we can to have conversations and share information together. And certainly, I know that top of mind right now for everyone is likely the summer that we're currently in and the upcoming school year, fall of 21. So the fact that you're willing to devote some time to the really important topic of our future, looking ahead to fall of 22, is something we really appreciate. So again, looking forward to the conversation and information in today's session. I'll be staying tuned.
Dr. Cashwell, thank you very much. And I mentioned that this was the third in a series of 3. Yesterday, we did a session that was just for Henrico County Public Schools employees, so we could have a discussion from the employee perspective. At 11 o'clock this morning, we did the first of 2 sessions today, and so here we are at 4 o'clock for the afternoon crowd. I'd like to bring in now Dr. Beth Teigen, our Chief of Staff, and Beth oversees the work of the HCPS Calendar Committee, and Beth will help us understand where we are right now and where we are going in the future. So, Dr. Teigen, Beth, take it away.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here and being willing to provide your ideas and your insight as this calendar process continues. Again, this is not for this coming up year. This is for 22-23 and beyond, for which we're discussing today. And so we have been preparing for the start of this upcoming year for a while, but we have also re-engaged the calendar committee to look ahead 14 months at that 22-23 and even 23-24 school year calendars. You may remember prior to the pandemic that the calendar committee was recommending a 2-week pre-Labor Day start, but ultimately that was not adopted for this fall, as last year at this time when we adopted that calendar, we really weren't sure what this summer and fall might look like. And so it is time to re-engage our teachers and our families in this discussion about the calendars moving forward. And so this year's calendar committee, you might this might be a familiar list of the people who are represented on the calendar committee. There are many of the same members who were on the committee 2 years ago that continue to serve on the committee, but there were members that are no longer able or wanting to serve on the committee, and so they have been replaced by new individuals. But it's important to note that we still have maintained that each magisterial district has a teacher, a student, a parent, someone that's on the clerical staff, an administrator, a business partner, or community member that is representing that district. We also have central office staff that are represented on the calendar committee because they bring such an important perspective and lens through which to look at things, whether it's, HR with hiring considerations or facilities when we think of building uses or athletics. It's just important that we have a diverse group of individuals on this committee. And so the committee first met on June 23rd for this year, looking at 22-23 school year and 23-24 school years. And that meeting was really discussing the feedback from a lunch and learn session that was held just like this back on June 9th. And the calendar committee is scheduled to meet again next week to take the feedback from this week's sessions and feedback that's been gathered since the school board meeting on June 24th. to review that and make possible changes to recommendations. But based on the feedback from that calendar lunch and learn session in early June, the calendar committee recommended that we put forward two different scenarios for the school board. One being a pre-Labor Day calendar that will help align us with our other school divisions in the region and allow for additional employee holidays without adding additional work days. We have heard loud and clear that a week earlier start must mean a week earlier end date. And in addition, we were already hearing from staff that the inclusion of the additional religious holidays is just a wonderful way to honor Henrico's student diversity, but it doesn't really, they didn't feel like we had honored the diversity of our staff. And so in a pre-Labor Day start, teachers would ultimately have the same number of work days that they do now. So contract length would remain the same, and they would be provided with additional staff holidays throughout the year, as well as some advantages for our students when it comes to leveling the playing field for them. And we'll discuss that a little bit later. And a post-Labor Day start would maintain the status quo with a mid-June ending date and professional learning embedded into the school year. And so what did those calendars that look like that resulted from the calendar committee? You can see them here. I know they are very difficult to see, but they are posted online on the website. And I am sure one of my friends from communications will drop the link into the chat so that if you want to pull up the calendars, you can. From the responses we had from families and staff after the June 9th lunch and learn, the most common comment, it didn't matter if they said, yes, I want a pre-Labor Day, no, I don't want a pre-Labor Day, or I'm really undecided. It very much was, we would like that any changes would have to result in an earlier start, meaning an earlier ending, and really the desire to close the school year closer to the end of May or early June. And so we knew that that would require a 2-week pre-Labor Day start. So revisions were made to the calendar, and we decided to add a 23-24 school calendar so that we could look at a 2-year step from 1 week pre-Labor Day to 2 week pre-Labor Day that would result in the school year ending for our students on May 31st. And so you can see that here's the 23-24 calendar. And again, it is posted on the website. And so each of these 4 calendars, it doesn't matter which year and whether it's pre or post Labor Day, they provide the 990 instructional hours and actually additional above that so that we have built-in time for inclement weather days. They also have 191 teacher work days, which is what we need for the teacher contract. And each one provides the observance of religious holidays throughout the year. So those are the things that are similar. Let's look at the difference between the pre and post Labor Day. In a pre-Labor Day start, the school year again would start 1 week earlier in year 1 and ends 1 week earlier. And additional days would be included as teacher holidays. And for example, the Friday before Labor Day would be a holiday for teachers, as well as students, obviously, to provide a 4-day weekend. And teachers actually saw this, and even administrators saw it as a perk because they often spend Labor Day, instead of enjoying it with their families, they're either in school or at home preparing for the first day of school. And in the pre-Labor Day calendar, the student holidays that were added in this past year's calendar would become not just student holidays, but teacher holidays, and allowing our staff to be able to observe their religious or cultural special holidays within the calendar. And so Yom Kippur, Diwali, and Eid al-Fitr would become student and teacher holidays. The calendar also includes other holidays. Christmas is included on the calendar, but we know that's incorporated within winter break. And we also have Easter and the Lunar New Year, but each of those falls on a weekend. And so with the post-Labor Day start, the overall length of the school year for students and teachers would be maintained, and the religious holidays would stay as student holidays, and teacher professional learning and clerical days. So it is a traditional calendar that really just maintains the status quo that we've had for a number of years. And the calendar committee still supports that 2-week pre-Labor Day start and wishes to honor the diversity of our teachers and families. They also do know that it's important for teachers and families to be aligned with other localities in the region. And this year, one of our neighbors, Chesterfield, is actually having a 2-week pre-Labor Day start. And some of our programs where our students participate, such as Code, RVA, and Maggie Walker, are planning pre-Labor Day starts for 22-23. And that 2-week pre-Labor Day start maintains or addresses the issue that we received in feedback was, let's get our students out at the end of May. And so members of the calendar committee, in addition to that information, did some brainstorming around the pros and cons of both the pre-Labor Day and the post-Labor Day calendar. And really, for the pre-Labor Day, they only came up with a list of what they saw as advantages. Lessening the time between when fall sports begin at the beginning of August and when the school year starts. Positioning the start and end of the year more closely with when colleges start and end for families as they're planning things around the academic time. Aligning the start and end of summer with the regional partners makes it easier for our families to find summer programming. We've heard complaints because other neighbors like Goochland already has a pre-Labor Day start, and kids have taken slots that are now no longer available as our students, came out of school this year. And then they felt like there was an easing transition back into school with the 4-day break at Labor Day, where there'd be 4 days of school, a 4-day weekend, 4 days of school, and then really being able to forge ahead into the school year and letting those transitions happen a little bit more slowly. And then providing the opportunity, in addition to those summer programming opportunities, is about summer jobs and internships. And if we're not aligned with the region, our families felt like there was a diminishing opportunities as well as limiting the time for work. And so then the only advantage that they said with the post-Labor Day was a level of comfort, continuing something that's traditional that might just feel right. And so what is next? Well, our next steps are we're gathering feedback from you all today, as we have in the 2 other sessions from yesterday and earlier today. And we're combining that with the data we've received from individuals that have provided comments since the June 24th board meeting. And we will look through and find themes in that feedback that we've received. And the calendar committee will review that and then look at the calendars and say, are there revisions we need to make before the August 12th school board meeting? And so there'll be recommendations likely that come from the committee about some changes to the current draft calendars that you're seeing. And then the goal would be school board being able to have some conversation at that meeting and then being able to share whatever the results are from that meeting, and then not ask for their approval until 2 weeks later at the August 26th school board meeting. So it gives about 6 weeks for everyone to be able to provide input and add additional drafts if need be of calendars or tweaks to these current calendars. And at this point, I'm going to toss it back over to Andy.
Dr. Teigen, thank you very much. And so this is the moment where we would like to invite the folks who are in the room with us, so to speak, to, if you have a question that's on your mind, if there's just an opinion you'd like to share in front of an audience, or if there's just something you think we ought to know, let us know by raising your hand. You can click a little button in Microsoft Teams to do that. You can put something into the chat and we will see that, because we have some folks working behind the scenes who will take a list of names and put it on my screen over here. But we would like this to be about a conversation. We are firmly in the middle of a community involvement, community engagement, and a community conversation. So we would like this to be a little less about me and Dr. Teigen talking for the next hour, and just provide an opportunity to hear what is on your mind or what you think we ought to know. We've set aside time until 5 o'clock. We can go past that if you want. We can go shorter than that if you want. And while folks begin to line up, and you can do that again by raising your hand within Microsoft Teams, or just putting your question into the chat, and I can call on you that way as well. Beth, I will have you answer a question that you've answered for the past couple of groups, and it has to do with school divisions being expected to be more responsive to cultural and religious observances for a wide variety of groups. And Henrico County in particular has attempted to lead the region in doing that, including the most recently concluded school year. But I wonder, Beth, if you could speak to our efforts and our desire to keep that going in future school calendars.
Absolutely. And Andy, you said we're a leader within the region. I would say that we have been a leader within the state. Now, while that was not our objective was meeting the needs within our community. We have led the efforts, and as such, Dr. Manns and myself were asked to co-lead a calendar, an inclusive calendar committee that has representatives from across the state. And, in that work is we're looking at, how do you identify the holidays that you add into a calendar, and what kind of obstacles maybe that you encounter through the process, and then how do you tear down those obstacles? And so that's part of the work that we're doing. And, there's definitely obstacles that we've seen that we'll be making recommendations, and they'll be coming from other faith leaders, educational leaders through pre-K through 16. And so we'll look forward to that, and proud to be able to have not only Dr. Manns and myself representing Henrico, but our students were a part of the last committee meeting that the governor asked them to come in and share how they felt having the diversity acknowledged within Henrico County. And it's just a proud moment.
Beth, thank you. That's where we stand, where we are still hearing from our community. Nothing's been decided yet. Nothing's been voted on yet. That comes later. So along those lines, we would like to hear if anyone in our room today has some thoughts on that, or some questions on other topics related to the calendar. I have 2 names on my list, so I will start at the top. Stephen Wozni. Stephen, if I pronounced your last name correctly, you're welcome, by the way, to turn your camera on, turn your microphone on. We'd love to see and hear the folks who are in the room, but if you'd just like to say your question, you are on, so take it away.
Thank you, Andy. I didn't expect to bat lead off, but there you go. My question is more a little bit of explanation or comment on your idea, and I'm for keeping the traditional start after Labor Day. I'm a teacher in Henrico. I'll be starting my 19th year this September. A few things that I would like to comment on the idea of the comfort level. I think it's really important, number one, for the psychological well-being of students and staff to have 2 complete months unencumbered after. I kind of think of it as a dessert. After school is all done. I think that's really important psychologically and for your mental health. Secondly, I think the weather of late August and early September is glorious. It's a beautiful time of the year. I can't imagine sitting in a room on August 21st. It's hard enough to sit in a room on June 15th. But thirdly, I would say that there's something about our shall I say Julian calendar of Labor Day being sort of a home plate. It sort of signals, I think, in a really proper way, the idea of a change, and having that change be not only calendar wise but weather wise. It starts to get a little cooler, and the beauty of that late autumn. There's something about having that Labor Day again. You looking forward, both students and teachers, having that time to ponder and reflect and to look forward. I really don't think having an early start, starting on the 21st and 24, or a little bit later, or working up to that, it just doesn't sit right because of the weather being so beautiful for those last 3 weeks. I think calendar set, and that calendar has a value because it mirrors, I think, the beauty of the season of late summer. That I just would say, see you in September. It's going to ruin that song. So
thank you
that's
so
really
much for your comments.
thank you so much.
Out of Godwin High School, appreciate you being here. And that's what this is about. We want this to feel like it's a conversation where people can just talk with us and share what's on their mind. It doesn't have to be what in my world is known as a live press conference where people just fire questions and we try to answer them. That's okay. We are happy to answer any questions that might also be out there. But if, like Stephen, you have something that you would like to share, or some opinions that you think should be heard in front of an audience, this is a really good way to do it, rather than us just sending out another long email that is really kind of one-way communication. This right here is two-way. I'll go to the next name on my list, and hopefully I pronounced this correctly. Sahil Ibrahimi. Sahil, that's the name I have on my list. If that is you and you are within the sound of my voice, you are up next. Take it away.
Hi. So I just had a question about the next year's school year. So are we gonna be in person also, or just have to be virtual and in person? We can pick.
Beth, you can go ahead and start on that one.
Absolutely. Next year, the plan is for all students to be able to come back to the classroom in person. There is the Henrico Virtual Academy. The time period to enroll has passed, but there's a wait list. Should that be something that you're interested in, but we are planning on having all students back in our classrooms.
And we have a page on our website. We call it the Back to School page, and I'll ask our folks working behind the scenes to drop that link into the chat. And Sahil, if you'd like to get up to speed on what has been previously announced and communicated as it relates to the fall of 2021, our folks will drop that link into the chat for you right now. As it relates to calendar discussions, I do want everyone who's either watching live right now or will be watching when we post the recording of this session, that the calendar discussions are not related to the upcoming school year. The upcoming school year begins on Wednesday, September 8th, 2021. Not changing, not part of this discussion. The calendar issues are all about 2022 and the year after that in 2023. So those were the first two names I had on my list. I would invite anyone else who is with us right now to chime in. Raise your hand using that icon within Microsoft Teams, or drop a question into the chat, and we would love to hear from you. This is really about creating the opportunity to hear from folks out there in the community. We did a session like this just for our employees yesterday. We did a session earlier today for the morning crowd, and this is our afternoon and evening opportunity to hear what is on the minds of our community, our stakeholders, and the folks we serve through our time in public education. So don't be afraid. We don't bite. We are here to hear from you. This is right where we are in the middle of a public information and a community conversation stage of this. And as Beth said earlier, it's roughly 6 weeks from now when we would actually ask for final decisions. So we want to create this environment where there's lots of opportunity and space for folks to share what's on their mind. And by the way, it doesn't always have to be through a session like this. On the proposed calendars page on our website, there's an electronic feedback form. We've gotten hundreds, if not by now 1,000 responses. and that's open all month long. So if you don't want to share something now or just would like to share an opinion later, that form, which is available on our website, is there for you at any point to share what is on your mind. I see a name, two names actually, Mary Davis. Mary, thanks for raising your hand, and I will turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Hi, sorry I don't have a camera, so I can't
You're
turn
fine.
it on.
Go right ahead.
I'm not opposed to starting before Labor Day, but I do think 2 weeks before is a bit too much. And my reasoning is that a lot of kids go to summer camp or have a late summer vacation, and so that would be a real disruption to those activities. And also, if we're stepping in and doing 1 week earlier next year and then 2 weeks earlier the following year, that creates a shorter summer for kids each of those years. And my son in particular will be graduating in 2024, so that shortens his summer for the rest of his high school program. So I'm just wondering if it would be a problem if we started 1 week earlier in Henrico while the rest of the community starts 2 weeks earlier. Could we, be different?
There is always, it probably still creates some challenges, but those are things that absolutely I'll take to the calendar committee to have discussion about.
And I
So I
think
appreciate that.
Yeah, Mary did touch on something that I want to emphasize, and it's how we are taking an approach that we liken to baby steps in a pre-Labor Day proposal. And before I go on, I want to be clear that neither Beth nor I nor anyone from HCPS is here to advocate on behalf of one version or another. Our job right now is to make sure folks understand what is under consideration. And in a pre-Labor Day proposal for next year, it would be 1 week prior to Labor Day, part of a gradual implementation if we were to go forward in that manner. The year after that would then be 2 weeks prior to Labor Day. So the implementation itself would be gradual, but I think I understand Mary's point, especially for a student who would be graduating in 2024. And Beth, I want to acknowledge the point that was made about summer vacation. It does chip away at the summer breaks on a limited basis. And I guess by a limited basis, I mean, as we transition, it would lessen summer break by 1 week in each of those summers. But then because the school year is shifting, in the long term, the traditional length of summer break remains intact. I mean, is that a fair way to describe it?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. The floor is open for anyone else who has a question, concern, or something they'd like to share in front of an audience on the calendar proposals for the fall of 2022 and the fall of 2023. We've set aside time until 5 o'clock this evening, and I notice our audience, we're gaining a few folks as we move along, so I want to remind or let anyone who has just joined us know that if you raise your hand within Microsoft Teams or just enter your name into the chat, I would love to call on you. This is supposed to be way more of a two-way street, a two-way conversation, as opposed to just hearing from me and Beth throughout the evening. So we would love to hear what is on the minds. If you think there's an opinion that maybe we haven't heard yet, or just something you think is important that the calendar committee should know as we go through this public involvement process and revision process before anything makes its way to the school board for an update next month, now's a really good time to chime in. So I will pause for just a moment and allow anyone who's thinking about speaking up an opportunity to do so. Stephen, we're going back to you, man. That's what this is about. This is a conversation. It's not, we have plenty of opportunities to speak, so go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I have the same sometimes situation in my classes where I have to help the conversation along. Question. How will ultimately the decision be made? Will there be a vote? Will it be an executive informed decision? Will we know it's 8 million to 6 million? How is that final decision going to be made? Have you guys scoped that one out yet?
Most people don't know. We have 14 million students right here in Henrico County. It's a big county. No, it's approximately 50,000. But Beth knows that process well. She can definitely speak to that.
Absolutely. We put out on the website the examples, the drafts of the calendars, and we ask for feedback. It isn't necessarily scientific, so it's not like a vote of, I want this, I want that, but it's really the comments that come through that help drive changes to the calendar. And then the school board, we share those at a school board meeting with the school board members. And while the committee and the, supported by the superintendent makes a recommendation, ultimately the school board will decide whether what the calendar is. And so it's a process. There's a lot of conversation, a lot of tweaks along the way. And that's why, we still have 6 weeks and multiple calendar committee meetings that will occur to take feedback that we get and re-examine these drafts. So we won't know until the 26th, I don't think, what the outcome is. Many times I'm asked to create new calendars, so with the calendar committee.
May I ask another question?
Sure.
Is it, as I understand it, you're, I think, saying it's going to be a consensus from that the school board will make a recommendation, and that will come from some consensus they make from the sense of what they're hearing from the public?
The calendar committee will make a recommendation, and the feedback from the public will be provided, and then there'll be discussion, and then the consensus from the school board will determine what the calendar will look like for 22-23.
Am I understanding you to say that the decision from the calendar committee will be made soon? I think you stated a time frame. When will that be made?
The calendar committee will take feedback from all of these input sessions and feedback from the community based on the June 24th school board meeting to the school board on August 12th. That'll provide time for some discussion, and any feedback that we have there will be used to generate potentially modified calendars, and then they'll be posted online again, and we'll continue to seek feedback, and then we'll go back on the 26th of August with what would be, our final recommendation usually, but sometimes we're asked to make other changes. And so it is an ongoing collaborative process.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I see a hand up from Stefan Zenkner. Stefan, if you are within the sound of my voice, you're up next. Go ahead.
Hey, Andy, can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear. Nice to see you.
Hey, I have a quick question. I mean, I don't want to complicating things too much, but is there a possibility, like, I always wonder, like, summer break is so long. We have a really short winter break and a really short spring break. Would be not a possibility to move like 1 week from the summer break to the winter break or to the spring break? I mean, it would help, like, especially small companies who have, like, where there's a team and there are 2 people who have kids. It's often hard to, and they both want to take off spring break, for example. It's often hard to for both to take off. So that would be great when there would be like a 2-week spring break. So one could take the first week, the other week. Is this something that could be a possibility, or would it make complicating things too much?
Yeah, it could complicate things, but that is the kind of things that the calendar committee contemplates. So, that is things, there are pros and cons, and we try to weigh those. But, we're open to ideas and suggestions. And so that's information, again, that I'll make sure that we take back to the calendar committee.
Yeah, I think I can contribute at least one other thought based on our experiences in the past few weeks, Beth, which is in the hypothetical scenario of adding another week to winter break or adding a second week to spring break, what it does, because we still have to have a minimum number of instructional hours, it ends up pushing the end of the school year back a week. And what we very recently found out is that the idea of lengthening the school year is not a popular suggestion right now. Perhaps not a feasible one at this time. So that being said, it wasn't in the context of extending the length of winter break or spring break. I'm not saying anything's off the table. I'm just saying we learned very recently that the idea of shifting the calendar is generally preferred over an option that might keep the number of school days the same, but still lengthens the number of weeks that school is in session, if that makes sense.
Families, the initial feedback from families and staff was, if you were going to shift it, make it a 1-for-1 shift. So a week shift start date should mean a week shift in the end date. But, the calendar committee throws around ideas and discusses them, and whether, it might not be now that an idea sticks to the wall, but it may be down the road. Those ideas come back and seeds have been planted. So, we still consider other things even, and we do look at the feedback as what we've gotten year after year after year, or even in the most recent year. I mean, because some of our feedback on calendars is very consistent, probably over the last decade or almost decade. And so the calendar committee tries to use that to say we know what our families and our staff want, so we might as well create it from the beginning and not create something too outside the box that we know we're just going to have to change.
I appreciate. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Stefan. Appreciate your insights very much. And we want to create that opportunity for anyone else who hasn't yet had a chance to share or ask a question or just let us know something that may be on your mind. So now's a really good opportunity for that. I will allow for some time for other folks to raise their hand by clicking the little icon within Microsoft Teams, or just drop your name into the chat and we will see your name that way. Otherwise, I will begin to wrap up. So if there are other folks who are on the fence about asking a question, I would say now's a really good time to chime in. But Beth, for those who are still here, and I do think we've kind of covered where we stand, but I certainly want anyone who's listening now or listening in on a recording to know that we're still, at this moment in time, July 15th, roughly 6 weeks away from asking for a vote on this. And so we are firmly in the stage of spreading information. We want folks who are seeing this session or seeing this recording to help us share information and direct folks to our website, where we have information not only in English, but in 4 other languages as well. And help us spread the word throughout the community that we are open for thoughts and ideas. And it will happen not just in a session like this, but you'll start to see flyers like this around town that are in English and in Spanish. We'll get those inserted into our meal service that happens Monday through Thursday at several schools throughout our county. So this is not the one and only opportunity to hear information or to get information, but it is a good opportunity to talk through it for folks who are with us now or will be watching a recording in the future. So I put it out to the room. If there are other things worth sharing, now is a good time to raise your hand or drop that question into the chat. And while I give folks another minute to think that over, we have one. Tylia, am I pronouncing that name correctly? Tylia Pickwick, you are on.
Hi, it's Tylee.
Tylee.
It's okay though. It's
sorry.
fine.
I'm sorry, Tylee. I should have gotten that right.
No, you're totally fine. I'm a teacher at Verona High School, and I've actually had the privilege to be able to come to all 3 sessions just to kind of get some feedback and see what people in the community, as well as my coworkers, kind of had to say, what they liked, what they disliked, and that kind of thing. But I did have a question. So the calendars that are being proposed, are you only getting finalization on the 22-23 school year, or are you trying to get both years finalized in August?
You know, I think the objective would be to have 2 years of calendars, you know, approved so that families can know and plan as they move forward for whatever calendar is approved. I think you know, we hear from our families all the time and our staff that planning is critical. And so having that time, and so there are other school divisions that have started going to multiple year calendars. I think it makes sense for us to start looking at multiple year calendars so that we can always be projecting, you know, that 2 years out. So a year from now, we come and look at a 24-25 calendar so that people, you know, I say that we have a very diverse community. There's a lot of travel that goes on, and making those plans are important to our families and our staff. So simple answer, yes.
Okay,
Tylee,
gotcha. I
hang on the
do.
line. Oh, go
I
ahead,
did
Tylee.
just want to. I did just want to ask about. So if we're planning on getting those 2 calendars finalized, maybe also having the option. I did hear a parent say that 1 week was good, but maybe not necessarily 2 weeks. Maybe having the second year that we're looking at also only having that 1 week previous. Having that be an alternate. That way we're not pushing it out to 2 weeks yet pre-Labor Day, and maybe having even more of a slower start to getting to that 2 weeks. Because I know that, Beth, you said that 2 weeks was as far before Labor Day as we can even push it at all. Like, we are not able to, there's a law in place that we're not able to push it any further than that, correct?
That's correct, because I don't want people to think if you baby step it, are you going to baby step it 3 or 4 weeks over time? Right. That would never, right. So important information, but yes. And to answer your question, you know, absolutely. That's, again, these are the types of suggestions we're looking for to go back to the calendar committee to have discussions about. Absolutely.
Okay. I did just want to voice that I do appreciate the pre-Labor Day start as a teacher, because that also allows for us to get out a little earlier, 1, and 2, right after SOLs, those dates aren't going to change for the most part. I mean, they haven't changed since many of us were in high school as it was if we went to Virginia schools. So we know that those SOL dates are going to stick pretty much in the month of May, with our retakes at the beginning of June, potentially the end of May. So having those last 2 weeks of school kind of just being dead weeks, as it were, it's almost better for the kids to get out earlier. Like, there's not much point of them just sitting around twiddling their thumbs. They want to get out. They want to have fun. Parents and families want to get their vacations started and that kind of thing. And I just feel like if we moved it, just shifting it, not extending it necessarily, but just shifting it like we've been suggesting, that would be a better option for our kids.
Well, thank you for that feedback. I know we've also heard from teachers, the early and families, the earlier start date, helping our students who are in, and our teachers who are teaching the students who are in AP and IB classes and so on, and being able to have additional instructional time prior to their assessments rather than having that instructional time after they've completed their AP and IB exams.
Tylee, thanks. I was going to ask you to stay on the line because I said at the beginning this was very much a two-way conversation. I was going to ask for any impressions that you've walked away having attended all 3 sessions. I feel like you began to hit on that, but was there anything else that maybe you'd like to hear more about, or you think the audience should hear more about, or maybe we've covered it?
I think for the most part you covered everything. I did want to say that, I mean, I brought up the SOL point, but also in the previous sessions you guys had brought up, or other people had brought up, that they had kids or students who are in sports programs, not just in the fall, but also in the summer. And so when you have kids who are in the fall sports, I think Ms. Tigan, you said that they end up having games and scrimmages and that kind of thing before we even start school. And so for the community to be able to participate a little bit more, and for these kids to have more of a easier way of getting transportation if their parents are unable to get them to and from, I think having an earlier start date for the fall sports would definitely help. But also for our kids on the back end, if they've got summer sports, they're getting out sooner so that they don't have to worry too much or stress too much about trying to get to practice, but also studying for those exams or feeling like they're twiddling their thumbs, and that they could be more proactive and that kind of thing. But also on the same token, you've got our kids, especially our high school kids, who are graduating, or you've got upperclassmen who are trying to get their license and who are trying to get a job, and then they're competing with your kids who are getting out in college in the beginning of May. So trying to push that a little bit sooner, maybe not the full 2 weeks right off the bat, but maybe just 1 week at a time, and maybe leave it for a year or two and then push it to the 2 weeks, and kind of gauge how everybody is able to, like, what they think and what they feel about it, and kind of get used to that. I think would definitely help. Because I know a lot of my kids, especially this year with virtual, a lot of my students were like, Miss Pickwick, I gotta go. I got work, and it's like, I gotta get to work. And I was just like, wait, we still have class. and so, like, I just feel like their time would have been, I want to make sure that my time is valued, but I want to make sure their time is valued as well. As human beings, I definitely think it's a two-way street, and that our kids need as much of that as we can give them.
Tyler, thanks very much. Appreciate that. Wanda Green has put something into the chat, and sometimes what I've found in the past day is that people put things in the chat because they don't want to speak out loud, but I want to give the opportunity for as many voices as we can squeeze into the hour. And Wanda, if you are within the sound of my voice and would like to chime in by turning on your microphone and or your camera, you are welcome to do so. Please take it away. Is that you, Wanda? Sounds like it's somebody.
It's Wanda.
All right. All right, Wanda. Well, I will direct everyone's attention to your comments in the chat. And I got in the habit of reading chat comments last time, so I want to be fair this time too. And Wanda, who identifies herself as a retired teacher and parent, says, I think it comes down to, do you want an extra week in August or to get out a week early in June? Change is difficult for everyone. Usually students miss their peers and activities, so they may adjust to the pre-Labor Day. But after a long school year, I feel everyone would appreciate getting out early. Those great summer, fall days can be experienced on the weekends. Smiley face emoji. That's from Wanda in our chat. Wanda, you are there now. I see you. You can probably say it a lot better than I just did. I hope that's not an alarm of some kind going off in the background, is it? It's a bummer, Wanda. All we're hearing is what sounds like a smoke alarm, which I don't think it is, but I hope it's not. We can try one more time, see if the internet works for us. Go ahead and unmute yourself. I'm sorry, Wanda. I don't think it's going to work for us. But your comments are in the chat. I've read them for the record. I am so glad you are with us. Thanks for making time for us on a Thursday afternoon. I appreciate it. If there are other folks who would like to chime in and say something, now's a great opportunity to do it. My list is clear. You can raise your hand by clicking the icon within Microsoft Teams, or just drop something into the chat and I will see it that way. The floor is open. And while we wait, Beth, I will begin to wrap it up, even though I'm still fully available and looking for other voices to contribute to the conversation. But Beth, I will turn it over to you for any closing thoughts that may be on your mind at this time.
Well, I just want, for those of you who've given comments and suggestions, thank you so much. And for those of you who have things on your mind or things come later to you, please go to the website and click on the link to be able to leave a comment. We really do depend on the feedback from our community as we go through this process. And again, the calendar committee will be meeting next week to look at the feedback and to make suggestions. So it's an ongoing process. No decisions have been made. And the only decision that has been made is we're going to start school on Wednesday, September 8th this fall. So not to get those conversations between this year and future years combined. And maybe you can help others as if they are confused when you're talking to them. Thank you so much.
And I do want to recognize one of our board members who I have seen in our list of participants, Mrs. Christy Kinsella out of the Brooklyn district. I'm not expecting anyone to drop what they're doing and speak, but I just wanted to recognize that our board members are tuned in to this conversation. We will be updating them publicly, as Beth has said repeatedly, at our early August school board meeting. And then there's a second meeting in late August where we would ask for a vote. So our superintendent, all of our board members, and the administration of the school division are tuned in to this conversation that's happening. Thank you, Sean, by the way, for participating in the chat, who's asking what's wrong with the current calendar. Why are we even considering to change the calendar? What are the advantages? Beth, we do have time left, so I will ask you to kind of fill that in on the back end, because those were some things you pointed out at the beginning of this conversation. We had a whole presentation about it, and I'm not asking you to reload all of those presentation slides, but there are, Beth, some advantages as it relates to alignment with the region, some academic advantages, some cultural and religious observance advantages, and I may have just touched on them a little bit, but Beth, you can elaborate a little bit for folks who may not have been with us at the very start.
Absolutely, and you did hit on probably the big three, but looking a little deeper at like the academic advantages, you know, our students some of our students take exams, IB and AP exams each year, and those are set for across the nation. And so other students who start earlier have an advantage of additional instruction before our kids do, and it can have an impact on college admissions. Those tests are given usually the beginning of May, and so that time matters. And also, as Tylee was saying, you know, that we've talked about the advantages of athletics, and a lot of times our kids who are in fall sports and marching band, they're starting in early August, and when school doesn't start until, you know, September, they're having part of their season before the year ever starts, and they have 2-a-day practices, sometimes 3-a-day practices. You know, for our families, it would align it a little better that they would have less time before school actually starts, and then those practices and games are during the school time when there is transportation. You know, I think about our students have shared with us and with the governor how much they've appreciated being able to have their be able to observe their high holy days, whether it's Diwali or Eid al-Fitr or Yom Kippur. I mean, those are, and they want to see, you know, they've spoken up and saying, we want to see our teachers and your staff be able to have some of that same opportunity that they can observe their religious holidays. And, you know, so the advantages, there are more advantages than that to a pre-Labor Day start because of some of the flexibility it will give us. You know, but that's, again, when we talked about as a committee what the advantages of a post Labor Day, it's just, you know, it's something that we're used to. And as you know, our retired teacher Wanda said, change can be difficult, and we know that, and that is comfortable for some people. But the advantages certainly, there are certainly advantages to that pre-Labor Day start.
Beth, thanks. I see Sahil's hands up. We'll go back there. Sahil, you are on.
I was just saying that some schools the rating are very low, like 2, 3, 4, 5. So I was saying that was those in your opinion or teachers and students, because I'm confused about it. Some people are like telling their own opinion.
Sahil, is that a reference to like something you might see on a real estate website like greatschools.com?
I think so. I don't know. I forgot the website name, but what is it on the website?
I feel quite certain, and Beth can chime in on this too, that those are not ratings that are in any way authorized or influenced by the school division. I do believe they are based in some way, shape, or form on publicly available information, but the methodologies and inputs are not something we're involved in. Beth, would that be a fair way to put it?
Yes, Andy, it would.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate you asking that question.
Great question.
All right, I'm going to start to wrap this up by saying that this is just one moment in time of an ongoing conversation. And if you go to our website, and our folks have been dropping the link into the chat all afternoon long, you can continue to put in some written feedback, share it with your neighborhood, encourage your friends and neighbors to tell us what they think as well. The basic information is there not only in English, but 5 additional languages. So if you see some of those links and want to pass around translations in other languages that are most commonly spoken in Henrico County, you can do that as well. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll get a recording of this session posted to our website as soon as possible, and we look forward to keeping you informed throughout the summer as this process moves forward. For all of us here at Henrico County Public Schools, I'm Andy Jenks. Thanks for joining us, and we will talk to you again soon. Take care.